Quick! Impending doom may be on the horizon, and you need to make sure you're well prepared to bear through those harsh times when they get here. So what's the first thing you do? You stockpile. Only the essentials though. Food, water, clothes. No, not that. Seems like a simple enough concept to grasp. Plan ahead in case things get rough. This is something that most people practice to some degree, even if you're not Mr. Bomb Shelter with boxes of MREs ready at hand. Something common might be a savings fund for a rainy day or an emergency contact to reach out to if you ever find yourself in a tight spot. It's strange then how in a time where we have mass global production, so much so that we're either damaging the environment or simply throwing away overproduced goods, that some of the world's richest nations were ill-equipped to handle the COVID-19 pandemic. For example, in the States, there were nationwide shortages of medical face masks in hospitals. This is mainly due to the fact that 90% of the world's face masks are manufactured overseas. Once the pandemic hit, countries like China began producing for domestic buyers exclusively. This led to hospitals across the US having to compete for masks and other personal protective equipment, with the winner being the highest bidder. It's not just the rich for-profit hospitals bidding for this stuff either. You also have state governments, poorly funded schools, and independent hospitals all within the same bidding pool for what little PPE is available. Here's the kicker though, countries like the US, the UK, and Canada had millions of N95 masks available, according to brokers in charge of selling them off to those with the proper proof of funds. This led to cases like New Jersey, where they had 43 million masks readily available and not one saw a local hospital because they were sold off to a foreign buyer who beat them to it. This seems really inefficient, doesn't it? During a time where hospitals and other institutions were desperate for this gear, it would seem sensible to distribute these goods based on need rather than to the person who pays top dollar, right? But current day markets aren't set up in a way where goods are distributed by need. Their only concern is to maximize profit. Markets today are actually very efficient. For the people that own them, that is. I'm sure whoever owned those 43 million masks in New Jersey made some bank after selling them off, but that left New Jersey high and dry for face masks. Before the government came in to stop prices from soaring, N95 masks were ranging from $6 to $7 each when, weeks prior to the outbreak, they were only valued at about $4. Once you lay things out like this, you begin to realize why countries like the US and those that operate similarly didn't take proper precautions to stockpile emergency equipment. It's because stockpiling isn't immediately profitable. Typically, when a private company or factory produces a good, their end goal is to make a profit from selling said good. If goods are just sitting in a warehouse en masse, that's not making anyone any money. However, contrary to what the market says, that doesn't mean that the goods hold no value. Put a pin in that, we'll come back to it. Another problem that arises from this crazy buying, selling, bidding game is that it leads to the possibility of one group or country hoarding necessities. Take for example how Canada has now officially purchased enough vaccine doses to inoculate every Canadian over 4 times each. Meanwhile, many countries that are seen as less developed or even less important aren't expected to receive the vaccine until 2024. If you live in a place like Cape Town, South Africa, for example, your best shot at getting the vaccine early is to join an experimental group. Even worse, Cape Town is literally producing millions of vaccines in local factories and then shipping them out to Western countries. The severity of this issue has led countries like South Africa and India to push for a patent ban on COVID-19 vaccine production. This way, they'll be able to produce their own vaccine products that would be more affordable to their population, rather than relying on locked prices and distribution set by the private market in the global north. Right now, to locally replicate the vaccine in these countries would be to infringe on intellectual property rights. And of course, countries like the US and UK who have large shares in these patents are opposed to it, and so far have been successful in blocking the proposal. Equitable distribution of this vaccine based on need rather than profit, again, seems like it would be the most rational thing to help the most people. But this approach is irrational in the world of markets, where the vaccine, or rather, the owner of the vaccine's top priority is to make money first, help the needy later. However, surprised as it may be after everything we've gone over, there are some practices of stockpiling that countries like the US and UK participate in, mainly within the military and defense industry. Western governments like these will typically buy and stockpile the latest in military technology and weaponry, and stockpile them in bases both domestic and abroad. This means that the government will literally buy from the military industry, whether it's profitable or not, in order to be ready for action in case they spot an oil field. In case they spot a threat to their national freedom. Governments aren't afraid to spend money on stockpiles like these either. Just look at how the US government has spent over $400 billion on a fighter jet that doesn't even properly function, or how the UK government has recently seen its largest boost of nearly $22 billion to its already $53 billion defense budget. These are just ways in which the government participates in stockpiling, but private corporations do it all the time as well. Whether it's Apple or Amazon, these companies participate in the stockpiling of, well, more capital. Be it raw materials, expanding corporate branches, or even taking on more workers, private companies are stockpiling as much as they can to profit for as long as they can. Of course, there are small ways we as individuals can try to mend some of the damages. Donating money and volunteering services to those in low-income communities, both local and abroad, who are more likely to be struggling with the COVID-19 pandemic is a good start. When it comes to larger-scale solutions, the biggest improvement would be the call for legislation that would actually end for-profit healthcare practices, especially in the US, which, after seeing how much the government is willing to stockpile for the military, shows that they could translate that same practice into the medical industry. This would ensure a centralized single-payer medical system where everyone, regardless of income level, can be treated for illness or injury. It would also ensure that medicine isn't being distributed by whoever is paying the most, but by the needs of the population. The owners of capital have one goal in mind, and it's ultimately to profit. At the end of the day, whether it be a shoe or a potentially life-saving vaccine, distribution is going to be based on whoever can afford it, leaving billions of people out in the dust. It also allows some countries to massively hoard loads of necessities that could be shared with others. To go back to the Canada overbuying thing, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has come out promising that they will absolutely share any excess doses they receive. Which is all fine and dandy for good old Canada, but what if we just skip that step altogether? What if we crafted our systems such that promises like that weren't even necessary?